Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tanya. This is Tanya. It's called Think Different. And boy, are we thinking different in Tanya. So look, if we want to rewind all the way back to the beginning, 51 chapters ago, it would be a big rewind. But here's the short story. The 51 chapter condensed edition, the Sparks notes, the Cliff notes, or whatever they're called. It's all about a spiritual path. It's all about exploring a way of connection. And as part of that, a major idea in Tanya is that it doesn't matter how you feel. You might be conflicted. You might be, all submished inside, mixed up inside. Don't take yourself too seriously. Just do the right thing, right? Even if you feel like, do I want to? Do I not want to? Just do it. So before Nike, the shoe and athletic wear company, right? Before they came up with the slogan, just do it, the Alter Rebbe and Tanya said, just do it. The main thing in life is our actions. Really our thought, speech, and action, but it's really about the expression and not so much about the inner struggle. The struggle is always going to be there, but it's what we do that matters. In the later chapters, which is kind of where we find ourselves, chapter 51, the later chapters, he talks about how to align our emotions a little bit more with our actions. You see what he did. It's kind of a trick. Don't tell anybody. Keep it on the down low. He said, don't worry how you feel. Just do the right ththing. Well, now that you're doing the right thing, how do we get your feelings aligned with the new action? You see what we did there? You see how we're slowly, it's like maybe a caterpillar. Is that a good example, right? Where the front legs go and then the back legs kind of catch up. So it's like, don't overthink it. Don't fix yourself. Just do the right thing. Once you're doing the right thing, all right, now we can talk about the other stuff. Let's talk about how you feel. And so in the last, 8 to 10 chapters of Tanya, a major focus is all about meditation. Meditations that will bring a person toward experiencing the inner emotions that are consistent with our newfound, newly discovered, newly embraced positive behaviors. So it's slowly inching our insides closer to where our outsides are now. By the way, insides, outsides, I mean feelings versus actions, behaviors, right? You with me so far on this? Good. So meditation. So he spoke about meditations that lead to an awe and respect of God, because that's very important also. Right? I've said this many times in different classes. When we love, we'll do something for the other. When we respect, we won't do something to hurt the other. There's a difference, right? Love excites me. Love encourages me to do something for the other. Respect encourages me to not do something to hurt the other. So we need love and we need respect. So respect, there are meditations that bring about a respect and an awe and a reverence for God. And there are meditations that bring out love for God. Some of those meditations, without getting into the details of the meditation, some of them are likened to gold, some to silver, different types of love. There's water love and fire love. Water love is like silver love. It's all about attachment and connection. Water is the ultimate binder. If you have flour and you want to make a dough, you add liquid, because liquid brings things together. So liquid love like water or love like silver, is about a connection where a person after this meditation or two feels that they want to connect with something greater than self. That's a love for God developed through meditation, which he spoke about in these last several chapters. And that's silver love. Gold love, just like gold, he says, is more precious than silver. Gold love is a higher degree of love, but it's more volatile. I wonder if in working with gold, if that's the same thing. I know that gold is softer, so I guess there is some additional measure of volatility there. I don't know if that's the right word for it. But when it comes to the love, gold love, it's very volatile. Why is gold love volatile? Because essentially the nature of that love is to not wish to exist. Where the soul is so in love with God, it says, you know what? I don't even want to be. I just want to melt back into source. I want to float away outside of self and merge and dissolve into my source. So it's not an attachment love. I want to connect with source. It's more of a dissolving love. I don't want to be. So the idea of connection love, silver love, water love, all the same thing, is I want to be who I am, but I want a relationship with the other. So I want 1 + 1, 2 that are together. Whereas the higher love, the gold love, is I don't want to be. I just want to be part of the greater. So it won't be 1 + 1. It'll just be 1. That's the difference. And we explained in chapter 50, at the end of the last chapter, chapter 50, that although it's a higher form of love, it's not necessarily why we're here on earth. We're not here to undo ourselves. We're here to bring the spiritual inspiration and bring betterment and enlightenment into the world itself. And so we need moments in which we feel like all we want to do is, merge with the infinite, but then we have to come back. We have to come back to the finite. Not because we want to necessarily, not because the soul wants to at its core, but because that's what God wants us to do. And if we really love the other, well, you really do what they want you to do. And what do they want? What does God want? Not they, plural, but what does God want? God wants us to make a home for him on earth. And we do that not when we're in the state of ratzo, gold love, right? When like the sons of Aaron, according to Kabbalah, they lost their lives on the day the tabernacle was inaugurated because they had such an out-of-body experience that their souls never came back. That's the highest experience for the soul, but that's not the purpose of the soul. There's a difference. It might be the highest pinnacle for the soul, but it eliminates the ability to fulfill purpose here on earth. So I don't know if the right word is paradoxically, but interestingly, the highest expression or the highest mission of the soul is precisely to be back in the body, back on earth, right where it is, and not be floating away and dissolving and melting elsewhere. So it's along these lines that chapter 51 picks up. Because really the upshot of what we just said is that although God and the spiritual and the Ein Sof, the infinite, is the highest spiritual experience, but the goal of life, the goal of all of creation, in fact, is right here on earth, which means that there's an advantage of this physical experience over all the spiritual experiences, including the highest one, which would be melting, dissolving into the source. And yet, that's not the highest experience. I mean, it's the loftiest experience, but it's not the deepest experience. That's to be found right here. So to explain that paradox, how the truth is found not up there, but down here, which is a very uniquely Jewish and Kabbalistic idea, right? So let me just explain that for a second. Most spiritual philosophies will tell you exactly that dissolving and letting go of the material is the highest experience. And that's the goal. The goal is to head up to the mountaintop, to meditate, and even if you can, to levitate and, and to leave, to check out, if you will. Judaism teaches that although that's the most spiritual experience, that's not the most purposeful experience, because our purpose is right back here. So to understand how it's possible that our purpose can be found here, to understand that, he gets into a beautiful analogy, which we explained last week, the analogy of the lamp, the oil lamp. An oil lamp is comprised of 3 components. Well, there's a container, like a lamp container, like a bowl, if you will. But besides for the bowl, there are 3 primary ingredients in an oil lamp: the oil, the wick, and the flame. So what actually produces the light? The flame. But you can't just have a flame. You can't have a flame without the other 2 ingredients. You can't. Flame, if you see a flame floating in the air, give me a call. We'll talk about it, right? And what's the flame? You can't just have a flame, a disembodied flame, right? I mean, unless it's a spiritual vision, but if on a physical level, flames don't just exist floating. How does a flame exist in a tangible way here on earth typically? It's when you have the other two ingredients, a flame on a wick dipped in oil. Now, each one on its own doesn't produce light. Oil sitting in a bowl doesn't produce light. A wick doesn't produce light. A flame can't produce light without the other two. So each one needs the other. But again, the main thing that's making the light is the flame, but the flame needs the wick and the fuel. And the analogy, which we explained in chapter 35, or the analog to that is the human being, right? The soul is the flame, the body is the wick, and the mitzvot that we do, well, that is the oil. So oil are the mitzvot. Second, let's let Mark in. Oil, the fuel is the mitzvah. The wick is the body, and the flame is the soul. So when you have a soul that's channeled in a body doing a mitzvah, that's how you bring light into the world. And that's a direct continuation of the last chapter. The last chapter, we talked about gold love, which is when the soul wants to leave the body. And he said, although that sounds like the highest, that's not the purpose. The purpose is for the flame of the soul to stay with the wick and to draw from the oil, to suck up the oil through the wick to produce the light. The oil would be the mitzvot. So it's a human being with a soul in a body doing a mitzvah that brings light to the world, that defines, or that constitutes, the purpose of why God created everything. And so that's the second part of the meditation. You might want to leave the soul might want to touch the divine, embrace the divine, and dissolve into the divine. But that's not why all of this exists. All of this exists for the soul, which is the flame, to connect with the body, which is the wick, and do a mitzvah, which is the oil. Does all that make sense so far? Yeah, this is okay. To understand, how is it possible? Because again, we've just given an analogy of a lamp, so it makes sense with a lamp that you need all three components, but still something seems missing. What's wrong with the soul just connecting with God? Like, why isn't that enough? Why do you need a body and a mitzvah? What's with all the tangible connections? Why not just the soul and God, the soul dissolving into, melting into God's, Ein Sofness, the infinite? What's wrong? What's missing? So to understand that, we introduced a new idea. And this is what we're picking up tonight on. The new idea is what I wrote in the email, if you got the email, spiritual HQ, spiritual headquarters. So again, this is a new idea. And so put everything that I just said on the side for a moment, and let's explore something new. Started talking about this last week, but we're going to continue the conversation tonight and really go much deeper and present new information. And I'll start with the times that we find ourselves in. The Alter Rebbe, once the founder of Chabad, the author of Tanya, the book that we're studying, right? The Alter Rebbe once walked into the study hall with the students, and he said to his students, "Medarf leben mit der Zeit." You have to live with the times. And he walked out. And everyone was shocked. What do you mean? We're supposed to be modern? Like, live with the times. Be more trendy. But what was he saying? So the Alter Rebbe's brother, the Maharil, explained. He said, no. What the Alter Rebbe meant is not, stop learning Torah, get a newspaper, read what's going on, current events. It's not what he was saying. What he was saying is you have to live with the Torah portion of the week, the weekly Torah portion. That's what it means to live with the times, right? Living with the times means that every day you're studying a section of the Torah portion and you're living with the themes, and you'll find soon that it's not just, going through the Bible on an annual basis, but it's relevant right now. And so it's by divine providence that we're studying chapter 51 of Tanya in a week that we're reading about the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, because that's exactly the topic that we're about to jump into. What does it mean that we're building a home for God this week? This living with the times. I know there's other stuff going on. If you go to CNN.com, you'll see other news. But in Jewish news, we're building a Mishkan. We're building a tabernacle. We're building a home for God. But what does that mean? What does that mean? How does God have a home? Why does God need a home? In fact, this statement that we're building a home for God raises so many more questions than we could even possibly imagine. So many questions, philosophical, theological, right? On every level, there are questions that are raised. But I'm going to ask the simple question that we introduced last week that we're in the middle of addressing. And that is, all the other questions aside, and there are good questions, but what does it mean that the temple or the tabernacle, the portable temple, what does it mean that that space was a home for God? Isn't God everywhere? That. Maybe I should have used a different inflection. Isn't God everywhere? Maybe that's better. I don't know. Right? God is everywhere. That's a statement now. If God is everywhere, so then what does it mean that God has a home in the temple? What does it mean? God is more there than anywhere else? What does that actually mean? How does that make sense? And he cited, last week, I'm not going to read it again, he cited in chapter 51, multiple verses that say essentially the idea that God is found everywhere. God fills the entire space of the universe. There is no space that's not filled with God's presence. God is even called makom, which means space. God constitutes the space of the universe. God is inseparable with the universe, with the space of the universe. So what does it mean that God has a home or wanted a home? So he asks us to build a tabernacle, a temple, and then that's where God's home is. What does that mean? So to understand this, it's a big question, right? God says, build me a home, v'asuli mikdash, build me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'sochem, and I'll dwell amongst you. And before that, you weren't? And what about not in the temple? God's not there. What does that mean? So here's the big idea. Here's the huge idea. We can understand this through the analogy of the human being. Mi besari echse eloka. When we look at our own selves, we can understand how everything works in the macrocosm. This is a powerful idea. I believe it's from Job. We read it last week. From my flesh, I perceive the divine. Simply, that means that from where I stand, I can still recognize the Creator. But it means much more than that. Not just from where I stand, but rather the human being is an analogy for the Creator. Specifically, the way the soul works in the body. Let me personalize that. The way my soul works in my body can teach me a lot about how God works within the universe, right? As soul is to body, God is to universe. Does that make sense? Microcosm, macrocosm, spirit, and matter. So, how does the soul work in the body? And here is the whopper, not the sandwich. Here is the whopper, the big idea, the huge idea. There are two systems in which the soul operates within the body. But before I tell you these systems, I'm going to ask you a question. Feel free to unmute right now and get in on the action while the action's good. All right. Here's question number one. Think about when you're sleeping. Think about when you're asleep. Are you still there? Yes? Yeah?
Yes.
It's still you or it's somebody else?
It's me.
It's still you, right? Bethany, it's still you. You're not you anymore, right? It's not like you become a new person. It's you. It's you 100%? Yeah, 100%? Yes? Yeah, 100%. Good. Are you aware? Are you aware of you when you sleep? This is a question to everybody. Huh?
In my dreams.
Your dreams. Good. Okay. But would we all agree that we are a little bit less aware of self in a direct way when we're dreaming, when we're asleep? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There's a little bit of a lack of awareness. You know, you ever sleep as it's not, again, it's a question to everybody. Anybody sleepwalk ever? Sleepwalk? Yeah. Yeah, I remember as a kid, I don't think I've done it recently, but I remember as a kid, you used to like just, find yourself like down a hallway somewhere, whatever. It would happen. You get up and do some sleepwalking. Anybody sleep talk? Talking in the sleep? Yeah, sure. We all sleep talk. Sure, absolutely. Are we aware of when we're talking? No.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay, sometimes, but sometimes not. I would ask the same question when we're awake. Are we aware of when we're speaking? Sometimes also, sometimes not. But at least we're a little bit more aware. We're a little bit more aware when we're awake. So the reason why I mention this is to give to kind of paint the picture here about different states of being. You see, there's what we call in Kabbalah, there's etzem, and then there's gilui. These are really important terms, and they recur throughout Kabbalistic thought in many different ways. But again, I'll you know what? I'm going to write it in the chat so you can see it. So you can see the words. I'm going to do all caps. Etzem and gilui. I don't know if that's how you spell it, but whatever. It's in Hebrew, but I mean, I wrote it in English. Okay, etzem and gilui. Etzem is essence. It even sounds like it. Etzem, essence. And gilui. Okay, so we have essence and revelation. I don't like that word revelation, but that's the way it's typically translated. So I'm going to be consistent with the way it's typically translated. All right. Etzem is essence. Gilui is revelation. In other words, when it comes to a human being, we can look at it in two different ways. The difference between, or the states of being awake and the state of sleeping. So on a level of essence, etzem, do you have the same essence when you're awake and when you're sleeping? Is it the same you, the same essential you? Sure. On a level of gilui, revelation, or consciousness, is it the same? No, it's different. Let me ask you another question. Think of a room filled with 5th grade students. Let's make it a smaller class. Let's say there's 15 students in a class, 5th graders, and the teacher is teaching them mathematics. The teacher is, I don't know what I could call a child around here, but whatever. I'm not sure exactly. I forget what they learn in 5th grade exactly for math. But whatever 5th grade math is, it's one concept that the teacher is teaching. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you the question this way. Is the same concept being taught to all the children? Yes. Is the same thought being understood by all the children? No. Right? Some kids are getting it. Some kids are getting 100%. Some kids are getting it 75%. Some kids are not getting it at all. Everyone's getting it a little differently. On a level of etzem, is it the same? Essentially, is it the same idea? Yes. Gilui, on a level of revelation, in other words, is it illuminating their brains the same way? There's distinction. And a third example. I'm giving all these examples to show you how it depends what you're talking about. You could either say yes or no. In other words, is it there or is it not there? Depending on whether you're talking about essence or revelation. Right? So are we all there when we're sleeping? Well, essentially, yes, but in a revealed way, not 100%. Is the idea in all the children in that math class? Well, essentially, yes, but in a revealed way, no. I'll give you one more example. And this is the example that he gives. Those were my examples, and they're imperfect. But here's the example that he gives in the text, which we started at the end of last week. Think about the different parts of the human body. So think about your head, but more precisely, think about your brain, your consciousness, your awareness. And then think about your eyes that have the power of sight. Think about your ears that have the power of hearing, your nose that can smell, your mouth that can talk and taste. Think about all of the wonderful faculties that you have in the head region, if you will. I don't know what else to call it, right? Your head. And then think about your torso. Think about your arms, your fingers. Think about your legs, your feet, your toes. And I'll ask the following question. On a level of etzem, essence, yeah? Where are you? Are you in your head? Is the you in your head? Sure. Is the you in your eyes? Sure. Is it in your hands? Yeah, it's not another me, it's the same me. Is it in your toes? Yes. In other words, on an etzem level, on an essential level, you are everywhere. But on a level of Gilui, revelation, where do you sense life? Where do you sense, where are you aware, self-aware of life and self? It's in the head. So on a level of etzem, let's introduce now the soul. On the level of etzem, essentially, the soul is everywhere, equally. The soul is in your head, the soul is in your eyes, the soul is in your nose, the soul is in your hands, the soul is in your toenails. Everywhere you are, your soul is there. There's no difference, essentially. But on a revealed level, where do you see the soul? Where do you see the seat of life and consciousness? You see that in the head. That's a perception, not necessarily a hard and true and fast reality. Are you with me on that? Yes? Remember, the difference between etzem and gilui, essence and revelation, is not the thing itself, but it's the revelation of that thing itself. Right? That's literally the definition of etzem and gilui. Etzem means the thing, and gilui means the apparent, apparent, the apparentness of that thing. So it could be there, but you don't see it. Like when we're sleeping. Again, on some level, we are aware, but on a very strong level, we're not, certainly not as aware as when we're awake. So we're definitely 100% there. It's still us, but it's not so revealed to ourselves. The idea that the teacher teaches is the same idea to all the kids, but it's not as revealed to all the children necessarily. It's possible, yes, but possibly not. Possible that it's not. And the same thing is true with the soul and the entire body. The soul essentially is everywhere equally, right? No part of the body has more of a claim to the soul than any other part of the body. But if the soul is life, which part of the body seems to carry with it, again, on an apparent level, on a visual level, right, on a revelation level, which part of the body seems to carry more of the life of the soul? That would be the head, the brain, the seat of consciousness, the seat of awareness. So yeah, the soul is in the toe, the little toe, right? Remember this little toe went here, that little toe went there, and the little toe and something, right? So yeah, was that toes? I don't remember. It's whatever. Either way, the little toe that may or may not have gone anywhere, right? That little toe has the same soul as your brain. But where do you see the soul? I mean, where do you see the life, the consciousness? Yeah, a person can live without a toe. Without a head, doesn't mean the toe doesn't have soul. It just means that the gilui, the revelation of the soul, is primarily in the head. This is what I meant when I wrote spiritual headquarters. You see, the soul is everywhere, but there is at the end of the day a seat or a headquarters of where the soul is open and obvious. So it's everywhere. But in a revealed way, it's primarily in the brain. This is how the Alter Rebbe answers the question that we posed on the Mishkan, on the Beis Hamikdash, on the temple. The question we asked was, why does God need a temple? And what does it mean that God is found in the temple? Isn't God everywhere? Yeah, but where do you see God? That's the difference. And that's it. We just answered the question. You with me on this? There's Gilui and there's Etzem. Yeah, God is essentially everywhere, right? God is essentially everywhere. God is not absent anywhere, even in literally the darkest of places. I don't mean physically dark. I mean the darkest of places, right? The ugliest of places, the most evil of places, God is there. But do you see God there? No. There's no Giloi, there's no revelation of God there. Where do you see God? In a holy space, in a godly space. Oh, does that mean that God is not in other spaces? No, God is there. So then why is this a godly place? Because this is where you see God. And if you saw God in that place, we would also call it a godly place. So it's not so much about if God is there or isn't there. It's about you and I. It's about our perception of that truth. Are you with me on what I'm saying? In other words, on God's terms, God is everywhere equally. On our terms, there are distinctions. And because we operate based on our perception, we therefore, and we have to, those are the rules that God gave us to live with it, to live with and to live within. Because of that, God said, make a space where I am obvious. When you walk in that building, you're filled with an awe and a love for me, with a sense of, yeah, this is real. This is legit. Not to limit that space, not to limit that expression, but to be so inspired by that space where the truth is revealed that all you want to do is keep on sharing it throughout the rest of the planet. Does that make sense what I just said? Yes? Okay. So is the temple a more godly place than anywhere else? Yes and no, or no and yes. No, God is not there more than anywhere else, but we perceive God more there than anywhere else. And that's also significant because perception is significant. Okay. Any questions so far before we jump into reading this in the text? Donna, go ahead.
So why,
Donna and then Mark, yeah.
Why do we not, I mean, we're reading in the Torah, it's just the Mishkan, but why throughout our history haven't we had more opportunities to have these more godly spaces?
So great question. Excellent question. We had a Mishkan, then we had a Beit HaMikdash, a holy temple. And it depends, and there are many different ways to look at it, either because we couldn't take care of it properly, or if you want to look at it from a negative perspective. Positive perspective is God wanted to actually expand it. So he said, instead of one temple, you have now synagogues, right? And every synagogue is a holy space. So it's about diversification, if that's
expansion.
That's about diversifying, right? It's about creating more diversity and extending it throughout the world. And there are different ways that you can look at it. On a simple level, it was a consequence of not behaving like we needed to. So we don't have a temple, but at least we have some holy spaces that aren't as holy as that holy space, because you sense that it's a holier space. But do you have the same sense of awe and reverence and love as you would have when you went to the temple of old? No. So on one level, it's a consequence. On the other level, it's maybe about diversifying, getting the message out there. But it's a good question. But the short answer is we do have spaces that are holy. And we have time that's holy. You know, Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Oh, what does that mean? God's not here on Thursday, March 11th? No, God's here. Is God more here or less? No, God, the same God is here right now as on Yom Kippur by Ne'ilah time at the closing service. It's the same God. What's the difference? We sense it more on that day. And that's significant because perception is significant. Mark, go ahead.
What I'm having difficulty with is that God commanded the Israelites to come to the temple 3 times a year with their sacrifices. He didn't say, In other words, if everything's equivalent, I'm playing the devil's advocate. But if everything's equivalent, every place is equivalent, then why didn't he say, go in your backyard, go outside where you live?
Good. Yeah. Because God knew how human beings work. God knows how human beings work. And we work with exclusivity. Exclusivity makes things exciting. So God says, yeah, God could have said, every place is a temple because I'm everywhere. That's the big reveal. And we would have said, nah, you're such a joker, right? Nah, you're kidding. So God says, all right, I'll work with you, right? You like things that are exclusive, that gives a sense of excitement. And I mean, look, marketing, yeah, those that are in marketing, Madison Avenue, they know this. They know the deal. They know, oh, Mark, literally, I'm speaking to the man, right? I don't need to tell you about this, right? You create exclusivity. The next thing you know, it's a fad, it's a trend. Everyone's got to have it. Why? Because you couldn't get it everywhere. Yeah. So, I mean, is it a psychological ploy? I don't know. I think it's more, that's kind of what I'm saying, but I think it's more than that. And it's less devious and more subtle and more nuanced than that. And maybe I hope this comes through. Number one, that's how we work. We work when you hear that every place is holy, then nothing is holy. When you hear that one place is holy and you got to go there and it becomes a thing, then it's a thing. And then the purpose is now realize that your space is also holy. Now at least you have a handle, a context of which to, a baseline to compare or to work toward. But also because I think it's not only that we need to be tricked into exclusivity, but it's also because the human beings, you got to start with one space. You got to start with cultivating one area. And that's how and then you can move forward from there. It's really hard to conquer all spaces at all times, simultaneously. It's just very difficult. So we have this one space to build and to nurture and to cultivate. And from there, we hopefully fan out. But making a pilgrimage, going to the temple 3 times a year, as you mentioned, first of all, thank you for mentioning that, because that was such an important part of ancient temple life that maybe we don't always think about. The major holidays, including Passover, which is upcoming, were called pilgrimage festivals, where everyone was, well, at least heads of household, not everyone could physically make it, but at least one rep per household was meant to make that pilgrimage up to the temple in Jerusalem, to the Temple Mount, and bring an offering and show up. And if you don't have that, then at some point, everything gets lost. If you don't have that one space of exclusivity, then nothing is holy anymore. Like if Judaism came out, like if we came out with a new thing, which we couldn't, obviously, because you can't go against the Torah. But if we said, you know what, we've been thinking about it for a few years now, and we decided, you know what, every day is Yom Kippur. Every day is holy. What makes Yom Kippur holier than any other day? Every day is holy, right? Why is one? It doesn't even make sense that one day is a day of atonement, a holy day, a day of awe. What does that even mean? Every day is holy. Literally, every day is holy. The moment that would happen, done, finished. Nothing's holy anymore. It's just, you ask me why. I don't know that I can explain it, but it's done. It's finished. That's what Korach said to Moses, right? His cousin. He said, everyone's holy. Why do you need leadership? If everyone's holy, then no one's holy. You need a benchmark. You need a reference. You need that one ideal that you can then strive toward. If you don't have it, because everything is the ideal, so you needed to have one place in which you had revelation, not only essence, but gilui, revelation. God is everywhere, but God is perceived not everywhere. Perceived in the greatest way, to the greatest extent, in that singular space, the space of the temple. All right. I hope that made sense.
Plus it elevates, the experience is elevated because of the work and the beauty and the contributions of everybody of the Mishkan.
Right.
So it's a special place.
Yeah, it's something special, and there's work and there's focus. And you'll find that also with time as well, right? Space and time. are paralleled. So space would be the temple, time would be like Yom Kippur. So we invest in it, we prepare for it, we don't eat on it. For something to be special, typically it requires a lot of work, and it's the work that makes it special. Honestly, I mean, don't quote me on this. I'll deny it to the end. I know we're being recorded, but you could take Thursday, March 11th and decide for yourself, today is going to be as holy as Yom Kippur, and then do the work and and fast and make it holy. And you'll find God, because God is everywhere to be found. It's just about perception. Now, obviously, God, there's maybe more open, less open from God's perspective as well, which is another part of the conversation. But there's a lot that we can do on our own to open up. And the goal is actually to do that. But there's a reference point, right? There's a baseline against which everything else is measured. In time, it's Yom Kippur. In space, it's the Holy Temple. So again, to kind of just get this in context, the Alter Rebbe asked the following question. If God is everywhere, so what does it mean that God is in the temple? And his answer is very simple. God is everywhere, and yet you see him more in the temple. And that's by design, to inspire us and to inspire us to then make that truth revealed everywhere. But that's the difference. God is everywhere, essentially. But in a revealed way, no. But why not? Why isn't God revealed everywhere? Good question. Let's make it happen. That's on us. We worked hard, as Donna just said, to make one space really nice. It's like, let's say you have a house that you buy. It's a fixer-upper, right? And you're slowly refurbishing or whatever it is. Yeah, you're fixing it up. And you start with the kitchen. Why not? Good place to start. You start with the kitchen. And your kitchen, you invest, you do the work yourself, and you source the materials, and it's a labor of love and hard work, and it takes a year and a half, 2 years. And you finally have that kitchen. It's gorgeous. You walk into your house, the kitchen is gorgeous. Does that mean the rest of the house is not your house? It's your house. But you invested a lot of energy into this space. It's exactly the way you like it. It feels at home. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. It feels home because it's your stuff. It's how you like it. Is the rest of your house not your house? It's your house. The same title, the same deed applies to the kitchen as to the living room. Same house, right? But where's your space? The one that you invested in, or the place that you invested in. So that's the thing. Now, why can't you invest in the whole thing? Yeah, you should. You got to start with one place to know that you can do it and to be the benchmark and to be kind of the reference point for everything else. All right. I think I'm just repeating myself at this point. Let's jump inside and explore this in the text. All right. Sharing screen. Give me a moment. I've been a little struggling with the sharing screen feature lately, but I hope it's going to work. All right, stay with me if it doesn't. Okay. Can you, hold on. Give me a second here. Tell me, can you see the Tanya now?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. You see I'm scrolling up and down? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right, I'm going to fast forward to where we're up to because we did start this last week. We talked about the lamp. That's how we started off. Then we talked about the soul and we spoke about the temple and the soul and the body. I want to begin from, hold on, I'm going to find it in my book and then I'm going to find it in the online page. Okay. Vihine ein shinoi. Vihine ein shinoi. Give me a second here. Here we go. All right. We did this a little bit last week, but we're getting a running start. Here we go. Everything in this chapter to the end I believe I covered outside. You're going to now see it in the words. I should also mention that this distinction of the whole point of chapter 51, or at least this part of it, the difference between essence and revelation. Essence is everywhere equally, but revelation, where you see it, sometimes is only in one space, like the soul and the seat of consciousness in the brain, or like the temple, the seat of divine awareness in the world. That distinction in the English translation is not so clear. I'm just going to tell it to you straight up. And I feel like the translators could have done a better job. I don't mean to be critical. I'm just saying that I feel like through language, you can emphasize, like it is in the Hebrew, the exact difference. I feel like it's a little bit like rounded, so you don't see the sharp distinction. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. But I'm going to try to mention it so that it's clear. And I'll even show you the Hebrew. Now, this is with the analogy of the human body. The variation in receiving the functional powers and life force by the organs of the body from the soul, each organ receiving from the soul a life force and power in a different form. Now, that does not derive from the soul's essence and being. That we should say that its being and essence, the essence of the soul, is divided into 248 different parts, which are enclosed in 248 locations according to the design of the various locations of the body's organs. In other words, the soul does not have, there's not like a different soul in the head and a different soul in the arm and a different soul in the toenail. It's the same, like I said before, it's the same soul everywhere. It's one soul, because we can't say that it's different souls in different parts of the body, because according to that way of thinking, it would follow that the soul's essence and being is designed in a physical design and a likeness and structure similar to the structure of the body, God forbid, right? If the soul, the essence, not the revelation, but the essence of the soul would be different based on the body, then you would have different souls or different parts of the soul. And that's just simply not what the soul is. Rather, is the soul entirely a single spiritual entity. And again, I wish they did a better job in the translation, because the Hebrew says etzem. I just highlighted it, etzem. And I don't see the word essence here. With all due respect, I don't see the word essence. And I feel like to show the distinction, you got to translate the words etzem echad ruchni. It's one singular essence, not entity. Entity, you lose the whole train of thought over here. It's not entity, it's essence. It's entirely a single spiritual essence. Etzem, essence. So what does that mean? It means that the soul in its essence form is the same everywhere. There's one essence that is throughout the entire body. It is plain and uncompounded. As a spiritual entity, its spirituality is in a form which is divested of any physical design. There is no physicality to it, and of any type of definition of physical space, measure, or limitation. In other words, it's not like the essence of the soul is only found in the head and not in the toenail. We're talking about essence, not revelation now. Essence is everywhere equally. The soul is free of such dimensions by virtue of its intrinsic being and essence. Good. We got that essence here, right? So there are no such dimensions when you talk about the soul's essence. And it is not, this is the key, this is the kicker here. It is not valid to say concerning the soul's being an essence that it is in the brain of the head more than in the feet. That's literally what I told you before. The essence of the soul is not more in the brain than in the feet, since its being an essence is not subject to the concept and dimension of physical space and limitation. In other words, just because one thing is a head and one thing is a foot doesn't make a difference to the essence of the soul. The essence of the soul is equal in the head, is equally in the head and equally in the foot. End of story. It doesn't change. It doesn't adapt. It's not held more or held less based on where in the body, which part we're talking about. The essence is the essence. It operates on its terms, not on their terms. The essence is pure, is essential, is everywhere, indiscriminately everywhere, every part of the body. It's the same soul. Just like you are you, whether you're awake or you're sleeping. It's the same you. Now, you want to talk about your awareness, that's something else. But you, your core, it's indivisible. Your core is who you are. It is who you are when you're awake. It is who you are when you're sleeping. It's the same you. It's not like you have two different yous. The you of who you are is indivisible. You cannot divide it into two parts to say that there's one you when you're awake and another you when you're sleeping. It's the same you. In this context, back inside, it's the same soul. It's one soul, not two souls, not 5 souls, not 10 souls. It's one soul. And that's one soul is in the head, it's in the arms, in the legs, in the foot, in the toenail. It's the same soul. Rather, no, it's not rather. However, everything we just talked about was about the essence. But when we talk about revelation, now we have a different story. Now there's distinction. When you talk about where you see the life of the soul, where is it perceived? Which organs or which parts of the body seem to be more important or carry awareness more, then you can distinguish and differentiate. However, there are 613 kinds of functional powers and vital forces included within the soul, within its being and essence, to become actualized and to emerge from this concealment into revelation. Why didn't they say revelation? All right. Again, I know I'm retranslating this, but please stick with me. Stick with me on this. What he's saying is there's one essence of the soul, but from that one essence emerges 613, that's the different parts of the body, which we spoke about last week, 613 distinct powers and abilities, each one revealing another part of a person's character and ability. In order to animate the 240, these powers are animated. These powers are revealed in order to animate the 248 organs and 365 blood vessels of the body through the functional powers of the divine soul, becoming clothed within the animating of vital soul, which also possesses the corresponding 248 and 365 functional powers and vital forces. The point is not the numbers. I don't want to get stuck on the numbers. It says there's 613 parts of the body, and each one reveals a different part of the soul's revelation. Again, the soul's essence is everywhere equally, but the 613 parts of the body reveal different abilities within the soul, if you will, and reflect and reveal the soul itself in different ways. So, for example, the toe, that doesn't tell you much about the soul. The brain is a little bit closer to the soul and what the soul, not that it is the soul, but it's a little bit closer to revealing the reality of the soul and the seed of life. Now, concerning the flow revelation of all the 613 kinds of functional powers and vital forces which are drawn from concealment of the soul into revelation, and they're now drawn into the body to animate it, again, revelation. When it comes to revelation, not essence, now that's when the sages, concerning this flow or this revelation, the sages have said that the principal dwelling place and abode of this flow and revelation, are in the brains of the head. Now we can distinguish. When you're talking about essence, no difference between head and foot. When you talk about revelation of the soul, where do you see life more? Now we talk about the brain. Now we can talk about the superiority of the brain over the foot. There's more obvious life in the brain than in the foot. A person might not, God forbid, might not have a foot, they could still be alive. But the head, you need a head, right? Not that the soul is more in the head than in the foot, but the revelation of the power of the soul is more in the brain than in the foot. Therefore, it is they, the brains, which first receive the power and life force appropriate to them according to their composition and character. In other words, it's the brain that first receives the chachma, namely the intellect, chachma, bin, and das, chabad, and the faculty of thought and whatever pertains to the brain. So since the brain on a revelation level is the place that reveals the life of the soul the most, that's why it gets the most life force, the most energy from the soul. It gets chabad, it gets the intellectual powers. And not only this, I'm skipping the non-bolded words. The bolded words are the translation. Non-bolded are the interpolated explanation, which sometimes I want to skip. And not only this, but also the overall flow of all the individual streams of vitality to the other organs is also first included and clothed in the brains of the head. So again, the head, the brain, let's just talk about the brain. The brain, well, every part of the body has a soul, has the same soul in it, but the brain channels it or reveals it or expresses it or is in tune with it in a greater way. And because of that, it actually, the revelation of the soul's life in the body goes first into the brain, and from the brain, it's like a router, a computer router. It sends it out to the rest of the body. Again, all of this is revelation, not essence. Essence is equally, simultaneously everywhere. Doesn't first go in the brain and then go to the rest of the body. Essence is everywhere simultaneously. It is everything. On a revelation level, first head, brain, and then everywhere else. And it is there in the brain that the core and source of the said flow, revelation, exists in the form in which the light and vitality of the entire soul are revealed. Yeah, that's where you see life. You see the seat of life and consciousness in the brain. And from there, the brain radiance flows to all the other organs. That revelation of soul, of life, flows everywhere, each of which then receives the functional power and vital force appropriate to it according to its composition and character. The power of sight is revealed in the eye, the power of hearing in the ear, and so on. But all functional powers flow from the brain, as is known, for there in the brain is located the principal dwelling place of the entire soul in a revealed form. Again, what's in the brain? The principal dwelling of the entire soul in revealed form, not essence. Right? You could never say that the essence of the soul is principally in the brain. You couldn't say that. Wouldn't be accurate to say that, because the essence is everywhere. But in a revealed form, primarily the soul is revealed in the brain. I'm working backwards in that sentence. Since there in the brain, the overall life force which flows from the soul is revealed. Again, I hope that's clear, right? Where do you see life? Consciousness. In the brain. It is only the individual factors of the overall life force which shine forth and radiate from there, the brain, to all the organs of the body. So right from there is everything else. Other revelation happens just as light radiates and shines from the sun into the innermost of rooms. By the way, this last part is going to be relevant when we talk about the temple, because as we said before, it's from the temple that then it's supposed to radiate everywhere. Our homes, as Mark kind of pointed out, our homes are also meant to be a temple. But you first have to have the temple, and from there it also radiates out, and hopefully we get inspired to make our homes into a temple as well, a mini temple. That's the point. Even the heart, he says, which is a central organ that also receives from the brain, which is why the brain naturally dominates the heart, as explained above. We can control our passions with our brain because at the end of the day, revelation of soul happens first in the brain, and from there it goes out, including the heart. The heart also plays second fiddle to the brain. In a truly similar manner, now we get back to the analog, the temple. In a truly similar manner, figuratively speaking, does the blessed Ein Sof fill all the worlds so as to animate them. Listen to this. The essence of the Ein Sof, the essence of God, is everywhere equally. God's essence is no more in the temple than it is anywhere else. The essence is everywhere. And in each world, but in addition to the essence, there's also revelation. And in each world, there are creatures without limit or end, myriad upon myriad of various grades of angels and souls and so on. So much diversity in the spiritual realms. And so too is the abundance of the worlds without end or limit, one higher than the other, and so on. So there's almost infinite number of creatures and creations on a spiritual level. Now, the core and essence, yeah, you like that, right? Essence. The core and essence of the blessed Ein Sof, the infinite, is the same in the higher and lower worlds as in the example the soul mentioned above. Remember, core and essence is the same everywhere. Yeah, just like it is in the soul, the same you is in your toe and your head, the same is true with God. As it is written in Tikkunim that he is hidden from all the hidden. God is everywhere. That means to say that even in the higher hidden worlds, he's hidden and concealed within them, just as he's hidden and concealed in the lower worlds. God is above and below. It's the same thing. Oh, but I don't see God. Don't worry, you don't see God up there either. The essence of God is hidden always. But the bottom line is God's essence is everywhere equally, simultaneously. It's one indivisible essence. Why? For no thought can apprehend them at all, even in the higher world. So basically, not even the higher worlds can truly understand God. Therefore, God's essence is everywhere, in an equivalent way. And he is found, right? Just as he's found there, so too he's found in the lowest world. So like he is above, he's below. It's the same essence. The only difference between the higher and lower worlds is with regard to revelation, the flow of vitality, which the Blessed Ein Sof caused to flow in illumine, reveal in a manner of revelation out of concealment. The only difference between higher and lower worlds is the extent in which we see God, right? Which is one of the reasons why the influence and flow of this vitality is figuratively called light. Why do we call divine influence light? Because light is shining. The question is, how much divine is shining in any given space? So the higher worlds perceive God more. There's more light shining. Therefore, we talk about it as a more godly world, whereas our world, we see God less. There's less light shining. So we say that God is not so found here in this world. That's relative to perception. To reality, to the core essence, God is here as he is above. But perception is important. Perception is, where do you see God? Well, if you were an angel in heaven, you would see God with a little bit more clarity, a little bit more light than you would down here. Hence the term light. We say that the higher worlds have more light, not physically. We have plenty of bright LEDs down here on earth. It just means spiritual awareness. There's more of that up there than down here. That's the difference. Thereby animating the worlds and creatures therein. So in other words, relative to the amount of perception, that's the amount of light that flows in. For the higher worlds receive this vitality and light in a somewhat more revealed form than do the lower worlds. And all the creatures therein receive the revealed aspect of vitality, albeit each according to its capacity and nature, which is the nature and form of the particular flow in which the Blessed Ein Sof imbues and illumines it. Again, I'm running through this because it's all stuff that we've talked about. Essentially, it's the higher worlds, higher creatures have more of a revelation, more of an awareness of the source. There's more light, so to speak. There's more clarity as opposed to the lower worlds. But the lower worlds and creatures, even the spiritual ones, do not receive the divine life force in quite such a revealed form as it is received in the higher worlds. We don't see God as much. Even if we're a tzaddik, even the greatest tzaddik below still doesn't have the clarity of vision like a pure angel or a pure soul in heaven. But we only see God by means of many garments, wherein the Blessed Ein Sof invests the vitality and light which he caused to flow and shine on them in order to animate them. In other words, we see God down here through a screen, through a curtain. It's like when the light shines in your home, in your living room, but there's a curtain up, but still this light shines in. It's not totally opaque. So light shines in, but it's filtered. So we see God's light. We see everything filtered. Oh yeah, I see God. Yeah, but through a screen, through an analogy, through an indirect way, not as much as it's seen up in the higher worlds. These garments, wherein the Blessed Ein Sof invested conceals the light and vitality, are so strong and powerful that thereby, with this life force and light, he created this world that is verily corporeal and physical. The screens were so powerful, he says, that God created tangible physical existence. And God creates and animates it by the vitality and light, which he draws down and shines forth into it, which is a limited light. So God screens and screens, this is called Tzimtzum, right? God screens the light so much that we stop perceiving God and we perceive self. Mazel tov, thus is born self-awareness, ego, and free choice. The illumination that is clothed, this illumination is a light down here. It's light that is clothed, hidden and concealed within the numerous and powerful garments which hide and conceal the light and vitality, so that no light or vitality whatsoever, well, almost no light, although he says no light, but a faint glimmer is visibly revealed, but only corporeal and physical things that appear lifeless. So what do we see down here? We only see the dead things. We don't see the true life force. That's our limitation. Yet, the truth is, in essence, they contain light and vitality, which constantly creates them ex nihilo, so that they shall not revert to nothing and not as they had been prior to their creation. So when you look around at the world, everything is powered by God, but again, we don't see it. So that's what we mean when we say that this world, there's not a lot of light, spiritual light. The perception is not there. This light comes from the Blessed Ein Sof, except that it is clothed in many garments. So it's the same God's essence. God is as here as he is anywhere else, but we can't see it. That's why it's called lower, not because God is less here. God is absolutely here, but creatures, you and I typically can't see it. As is written, Eitz Chaim, that the light and vitality of the physical orb of the earth, which is seen by mortal eyes, is derived from Malchut HaMasiya. And don't worry about these stages right now. And in it is contained Malchut of the next higher world, Yetzirah, and so on and so on and so forth, so that in all of them, in other words, scaled throughout the entire chain of existence, are contained the 10 Sfirot of Atzilut, which are united with the emanator, the blessed Ein Sof. What he's trying to say is that at the core, in the core DNA of this lowest world, is the same DNA that's in the higher world, the same DNA, the divine essence DNA that's in the higher world above it, all the way up, back all the way to be united with the Ein Sof, which means very simply that God is here in this world as much as he is anywhere else, because it's God's essence, and essence is indivisible. You can't say that essence is in one place more than another place. Essence just is. However, we don't see it. Why not? Because God put the curtains up. That's it. Tzimtzum. God hid the light to create this world in which we look around and we see all sorts of things. We don't see God. But yeah, you can find God. You can meditate on God, and that's the purpose. But it's not immediately apparent. Hence why we call this world a lower world, not physically, not spatially. It's like heaven is above and earth is below. No, the sky is above. That's not heaven, right? Sometimes we confuse the two. Oh, sky is heaven. No, heaven is another state of being where the truth is revealed. You see the truth, right? It's like, it's an epiphany. Oh, I got it. I get it now. Doesn't mean you traveled anywhere. It means you have a new awareness. So what's the point? The point is that there are two levels in which you can talk about the presence of a being. You can talk about their essential existence or their apparent existence, and you'll have different answers to the same question. For example, is God here on earth? Well, on an essence level, absolutely. On an apparent level, depends where you go. Depends where you look. Some places you're not going to find God. Does that mean God's not there? No, God's there, but you can't see God in those spaces, which then gives us responsibility. But before we get to that point, this is how we answer our question. And he'll answer it. He'll spell it out in the next chapter, chapter 52, which we'll start. We'll talk about this in a moment when we're going to get to that. But what's important to note is that this answers the question about the temple. Yeah, God's everywhere on earth. So why the need for a holy temple? Heaven on earth. That's where you look up and see God on earth. That's the space in which God is revealed. God's not everywhere. God is everywhere, but you can't see God. So we invested and we worked hard to create one space in which the curtains are removed. Right? We peel back the curtains and we see God. And now we keep on doing that everywhere else. All right. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is God is everywhere, but we have to let God in. God is essentially everywhere, but he's waiting for us to let him in. You with me on that? Like Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Where our job is to make the cracks. Our job is to crack the shell of our own ego, of our environments, to open up, to allow the light to pour in. The light is there. We just ought not block it out. Thank you for joining me tonight for Think Different Tanya. I hope this made sense. I hope it resonated. My apologies for going a little bit past the time. Next week, announcement about scheduling. Next week, we have our painting workshop, which is going to be fabulous. We have all the art supplies. We have kits, beautiful boxes that we made with the paint and the canvases and the paintbrushes. The art instructor, her name is Tanya. You cannot make this up. Her name is Tanya. So we have paint night with Tanya. So we will have Tanya next week, but a different form of Tanya. This will be paint night with Tanya instead of studying Tanya. Either way, she is just an incredible art teacher. And we have a beautiful piece of the Western Wall picked out. It's gorgeous. It's like modern, but classic, colorful. And she guaranteed me that even if you don't have artistic experience, even if the extent of your painting or drawing is stick figures, you'll be able to paint this. She will guide us on a 2-hour journey in paint. So you'll get the materials and you'll create beautiful art. So join me next week, 7:30 p.m., because we need 2 hours, 7:30 to 9:30 for paint night with Tanya. And you can pick up the art kits at any time. They're ready between now and next week. All right, that's a plug for next week. Don't forget also, really important, this Sunday night, I think most of you are already signed up for it. But if you haven't yet signed up for it, you definitely want to get in on this. A historic evening with Marion Blumenthal-Lazan, Holocaust survivor, author of the incredible book, 4 Perfect Pebbles. She will be speaking about her experiences, witnessing Kristallnacht, experiencing the horrors of concentration camps, surviving Bergen-Belsen, amongst others. She's going to be speaking about her courage, her story, the horrors that she faced, her resilience, and it's really about an uplifting narrative about a better world that we can all create. It's an incredible opportunity to hear from a survivor live and in person, and I encourage all of you to join us and to spread the word and encourage others to join this incredible evening. 7 p.m. Sunday night, live on Zoom, intownjewishacademy.org/faith. intownjewishacademy.org/faith. Join me, please, for that. It's called Faith and Fortitude, and definitely jump on that. All right. I think that's it. All the news that's fit to print. Don't forget RCS this coming Monday night. I don't know why I'm doing all the announcements, and then the following week, we have a jewelry workshop with our very own Donna, Passover themed jewelry. So you definitely want to get in on that as well. All right. Whew. That's it. All the announcements. There's more, by the way, because it is crunch time. 2 weeks before Passover. Get it? Crunch time. Are you with me? All right. Anyway, stay tuned in the next few days for information about some exciting Passover classes that we're launching. More to come. Also, some of you know this. For those that don't, in April 16th, we are planning our first semi-larger scale in-person outdoor event, safe event, Shabbat Under the Stars. Shabbat dinner, outside, on the Beltline, gorgeous 3-course, exquisitely catered meal, EB Catering. Stay tuned for more information. We will be limiting the seating to maintain safety and comfort for all. It will be outdoors. It will be spaced out. We will have a plated dinner, just an exquisite menu. I've worked on the menu the last few days with the caterer. You're going to love it, but we are limited. So when you see that email, make sure to click on it. All right. Coming soon to an inbox near you. That's probably going to be early next week. I believe probably early next week. It'll be sent out. All right. It's going to be nice. It's going to be nice to get back. We have nice weather, gorgeous weather, and thank God. We're moving in a good direction. All right. Be blessed, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Have a good Shabbat.
You too.
And love you all. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Let's go.
Pleasure. We'll see you.